Top headlines, but breaking news just coming in after a controversial CAG draft report which has slammed oil ministry officials for being benefiting Reliance Industries in the allocation of India's largest ever gas discovery. Now fresh reports that were ignored by the government for a year. This income tax report, which actually points to links in oil ministry officials and Reliance Industries way back in 2009. Rahul Srivastav has more on that story. Rahul, what do you have on this report?
Sonia, the interesting part is that the CAG report, which is a draft report on hydrocarbons, actually talked about some very crucial element.
Right.
But apart from that, what the report also says is that the Director General Hydrocarbons approved the initial development plan, that is for these basins the Reliance Group was operating, without questioning why the operator did not take into already initial development plan. It also recommends Director General Hydrocarbons and Government of India representatives on the committee which approves such explorations may be closely scrutinized to see why the operator, Reliance, it is named here, was allowed to violate the provisions of the production sharing contract. The CAG report recommends. Now, interestingly, in November 2009, certain things were being transferred from the CBDT to the. At that time, the CBI Director General of Income Tax had said very clearly that one of the officials who was the Director General of Hydrocarbons received a house from the Reliance Group. So one needs to know whether this charge is going to get investigated and why it hasn't been investigated till now.
Rahul, so that fact which came out, that CBDT report which had been reported then of that he apparently had got a house from Reliance Industries. Now, the point you've raised, why did no investigations go further on this? Why did it take a CAG report and a leaked CAG report to point out this obvious nexus? Why was there no action taken by the government after that? One political action, of course, we know is that Murli Deora, who was oil minister at the time, was transferred, but no further investigative action either against Reliance Industries or punitive action against Mr. Sibal.
Surya, what our sources are telling us that at the time when this Director General Income Tax report was handed over to the CBI, largely the investigation the CBI was looking into was into the 2G spectrum allocation, and that is why the recommendations and all the findings which were regarding the hydrocarbons and the operations of Neera Radia, who was running a communication agency, who was investigated time, never got looked into. The only action which was taken, that Mr. Sibal, who was the Director General of Hydrocarbons, was thrown out of that position.
Rahul, let me just go across to Raj Kumar Sahu, who's of course been tracking the Petroleum Ministry and Petroleum Minister Jayapal Reddy met the Prime Minister today. Raj, one important issue being raised is that when you look again, CAG hasn't exactly quantified the losses here, but when you look again at a time when the government is under pressure to hike petrol prices, what about actually cleaning up its own, putting its own house in order in terms of leakage and taxpayers' money, which is being wasted in, so-called scams like this?
Well, I got a chance to meet with the meet the oil minister, Mr. Reddy, but he is absolutely tight-lipped about all this controversy, and he's not saying. And he actually, what he said is that it was a scheduled meeting, which was actually scheduled long time back. But what we are learning from sources is that the CAG report has actually pulled up the government in a very tough way, or rather, they have come up in a heavy way. In fact, I would like to just point out to one of the things, one of the allegations that they have made probably against the government officials at that time was the line which says the role of DGH, what Rahul was just telling us, that the role of a VK Sibal at that time, who was the DGH, and the Government of India representative, basically the oil ministry representative on the management committee. So management committee is basically the committee which looks after the day-to-day running of a oil block or gas block. So all the role of all these guys has to be scrutinized very closely, and to see why the operator, that is Reliance Industries, was allowed to violate the provisions of production sharing contract and not adhere strictly to the term of the approved initial development plan. So clearly that the CAG have clearly pulled up the government in a very harsh worded this report, which says that there is obviously some kind of nexus between the private sector companies and the oil ministry officials.
Right, Raj. Thanks so much for that update. Rahul, just quickly coming back to you, looking at the whole political impact of this in what's being called a season of scams. Now, this gas basin has really been touted as well. India's showcase to the world. It's the largest ever. Reliance Industries had been complimented. We just had the huge deal with BP as well on this gas basin. How have things turned around so fast?
So perhaps the government will Petroleum Ministry will be applying to what kind of charges and the made by Auditor General. Remember, this is a draft report, but somewhere the government, what the government really is worried about is that what if the charges are proved right? Because as the CPDT report also points out, that there are certain charges which are floating around beyond the ambit of the CAG report, and at some level the CAG report does endorse some of them. So how the government is going to react to it, one will have to wait and see. The important factor also, Sonia, in this is that the opposition certainly is not raking up the issue with the same ferocity with which it took up the 2G scam. Perhaps the involvement of large corporate houses and the future of future explorations perhaps might be a determining factor in this.
Rahul Srivastav, Rajkumar Sahu, thank you so much for joining me on that. And our big focus, of course, also on the Singur Land Rehabilitation Bill. But with me on studio on both these topics is Parimal Nathwani. He's, of course, a Rajya Sabha MP from Jharkhand, but known more also as Group President, Corporate Affairs of Reliance Industries. I'm also joined by M.K. Venu, editor of the Financial Express. Mr. Nathwani, Reliance Industries in the news right now for all the wrong reasons. How would you react to that?
No, actually, I am not handling the subject.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, that one should respect whatever the recovery has been done by the Reliance. And I have not gone into the detail of the report, and I am not the right person to answer. But you can say that what scenario in the gas sector Reliance Industries has changed. So regarding this report, I have not gone through that and not my subject. So.
On the larger issue, on your head of corporate affairs, on the image of Reliance Industries, why do you think that it always somehow, for many politicians, Reliance Industries is a red flag? Why do you think that is? And with this report, will it only add to that image?
No, there is all passion when somebody is doing development. We don't hardly have any respect who is developing the country, the growth of the country. Previously, the time from Dhirubhai, I have seen that.
Yes.
Nobody has respect what we have changed, even in the telecom sector also, what we have done. When Reliance entered into the telecom sector, the mobile charges was 7 to 8 rupees per a minute, and we came with the 40 paisa or 20 paisa. So that's all we have done for the country, and the mobile was become for the ordinary man and not for the lavish people only. Right. So a lot of change we have done, but somehow somebody may not like. So I don't comment on that.
When you're saying that, one interesting fact is, of course, after these newspaper reports came out yesterday, that Reliance stock actually fell. And many reports within the market say, was this leaked by the rival group, by the Anil Ambani group? What would you say on the stock fall? And who do you mean when you say that people don't like this?
No, development, there are a lot of corporate rivalries always there. I don't comment on anyone because I am not aware about it. And
how do you react to the falling of your stock?
No, it's on the stock market people to decide.
All right. You said you not entirely followed this, and this is not your area of expertise, but the specific allegation of a house being bought for the DG of hydrocarbons by Reliance Industries, what would you say to that? That's a tax report.
No, I am not aware about it at all. And
all
I don't want to answer that.
We're going to keep you on, Ms. Nathwani, for our big debate on land acquisition, but M.K. Venu, the impact of this CAG report, and as you say, a season of scams, it's a good headline for the media, but the impact on governance, the impact on India's economy is huge, and especially when it involves, as you said, the world's largest ever gas exploration.
Yeah, see, the CAG report, essentially what it proves is, I wish CAG had concurrently done this audit while the exploration was on. The tragedy is that CAG often, does this audit post facto, because when the exploration was, when Reliance was doing the job, and when the capital cost was being submitted, I think, and the production sharing contract, there was, it went through a lot of confusion. I think the government is responsible in some ways for not clearly and transparently auditing capital costs for such a huge project while the project was on. So I think this CAG report will entail going back to studying the capital costs. In fact, CAG report itself says the reasonableness of some of the large number of items that have been put there as costs will have to be ascertained. It is, in that sense, it's not. It's implying that it will need further investigation.
Right? And I think that's a good point. Go back to such a huge retrospectively will have a huge impact on economic growth. But if there's evidence of well, rules being flouted, taxpayers' money being used, it's something that has to be done. Meanwhile, another decision which again goes back and does something retrospective, and what's the impact of that going to be? What's happened in Singur? Mamata Banerjee today called it the people's victory. Her government passed the Singur Rehabilitation and Development Bill 2011 in the West Bengal Assembly, acquiring land leased to Tata Motors.